Well, happy to have with us right now the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith. Premier Smith, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to talk with you again.
And I have to say, I was watching the speech that you gave before the plenary today, and clearly you are showing your support for Pierre Poilievre. But how difficult is that when you get along so well with the Prime Minister, it seems, on a number of fronts?
Well, I can tell you it seems to me that there's a 10-year legacy that has to be undone. And the question is, how fast is it going to be undone? And the Prime Minister is moving at one rate, and I think Pierre Poilievre would have moved at a faster rate. But what we do in our business is that we have to get along with everybody. And so I can still attack the terrible policies. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that I did not like 9 bad laws. 7 of them have been addressed. I didn't like the attack on our economic foundation, and I didn't like the attack on our way of life. There's still a lot of things that need to be fixed, and I outlined a number of them in the speech that I gave.
Okay, a number of things to be fixed. What would you tell the Prime Minister right now, or perhaps what you've already told the Prime Minister, in terms of what he needs to do to not only address the concerns of your province, but really at this point in time address Albertans who may be thinking of signing that petition to have a referendum?
Well, as I mentioned, I mean, when I see polls that show 30% or more of Albertans that are prepared to end our relationship with Canada, I know that it's my job to give them hope, and I've told the Prime Minister exactly the same thing. I think part of that has been partially restored with the MOU that we signed in November, and we worked very hard on that, and we're continuing to work to implement it. We're going to do our part to put in a proposal in June for a bitumen pipeline to the BC coast. We had a nice trilateral meeting with David Eby, so we're trying to come to terms with how we negotiate and consult with the First Nations and what their role will be. So that's one piece of it, and so I think that is moving along well. But quite frankly, the person who heads the movement is a gun shop owner. And when you look at the gun grab, which is unfair, it doesn't make any sense. The category of weapons they've created is a fantasy one. We don't have military assault weapons in Canada. We have had those banned for many years. But something that looks ugly has now been determined to be illegal, and you're about to make several 100,000 Albertans into criminals. And so that is very motivating for people. When I tell them there's nothing I can do about that, that's federal jurisdiction. And that's, I think, one of the things he's got to address. It may be popular in Quebec, and I understand their unique circumstance about the tragedy that they had with École Polytechnique. But I would say that in Alberta, we understand that a firearm purchased legally is a tool. It's a tool for it's a tool for ranchers and farmers. It's a tool for hunters and for sport shooters and collectors. It's one of their it's very important for them. They've invested tens of thousands of dollars, and for a federal government to come along and just say, "Give us your guns, we'll pay you a portion of the cost, and if you don't, we'll make you a criminal." I'm sorry, that's just not a persuasive argument. So if you want to understand why the MOU has not been sufficient, it's issues like that.
Does the Prime Minister hear you when you say that?
I don't know. I guess we'll see. We've got the end of the amnesty period for the buyback in March, and I think at that point, whatever he collects, I hope he says, it's been successful enough and we're not going to go any further. Or maybe he'll just say we'll go further in Quebec. But we've heard the pleas of the rest of the country not to go down this path. We want him to go down the path that Bill 14 has, which is criminal justice reform that all of us have been asking for a very long time. Keep the bad guys behind bars. Don't have the revolving door of criminals coming out and hurting people. If you want to talk about guns, go to the borders and stop illegal guns from coming in and getting into the hands of organized crime and criminals. And that, to me, is the way you build consensus. Let's focus on things that are going to make a real difference to public safety. Okay.
Well, you mentioned Premier Eby, so I'm going to go back to the MOU right now because obviously you had a meeting with the BC Premier along with the Prime Minister about trying to move this MOU forward because the Prime Minister, for his part, at least he said so in French last week, that there will be a pipeline. Probably his clearest words that he said on that topic. But how close are you to getting David Eby on side?
Well, I think for the Premier, we always focus on the things we agree on, and there's so many, because he's supportive of the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, supportive of interties so that we can leverage our solar and wind resources with his hydro resources and perhaps bring nuclear on stream, supportive of the development of Port of Prince Rupert and perhaps ammonia being an option to go out that port, and LNG export, so there's lots of ground to start from. But I respect the fact that we have to do the consultation with the nations. And one of the first consultations I did with the Haisla around the Kitimat port, and it's clear to me that that was perhaps an inappropriate port to put tankers through. You have a lot of navigation that you have to do through that channel. So what we're looking for is a deep water port right on the shore, so that we could avoid some of that environmental concern, but also to have a robust marine response and make sure that people understand how safe the new tankers are, but also make sure that we have a robust response in case there is any potential issue. I think that would go a long way to providing some certainty. And of course, the equity stake we think is vitally important for nations in both British Columbia and Alberta to have an equity stake in this line, so that they have a long-term revenue stream in the hundreds of millions of dollars, which will make a dramatic difference to the lives of their people.
Mm-hmm. So what's the process here? Explain this to me. Are you trying to find the port first, figure out the route, and then do consultation, or is it the other way around?
Correct. We're finding the port. We're doing we're doing engagement at the same time. There's a different legal threshold when you move to consultation. We're doing engagement right now in relationship building along the likely routes. But we're looking at 5 different ports right now, and the feasibility will be released when we submit the application. But that target is in June.
Okay, the target is in June. Listen, I also want to get back to the referendum, because at this point we're seeing people signing on. I was speaking with Rick Bell, and he says, there are those that are signing on because they want an independent Alberta. There are those that are just trying to send a message to Ottawa. That latter part in particular, does that mean necessarily, or at least do you interpret that as expect a referendum on this question?
It depends on whether they get the signatures that they need, because the first petition campaign, which really started all of this, let's remember about that. The first petition campaign was put forward as a yes/no question, and so we were that was what was being asked, and then the petitioner said, "Oh, please don't put it to the people." So it created a little bit of confusion about what to do about that. We're putting that to a committee. Meanwhile, this one has started up. If they get the requisite number of signatures, that'll send me the message that Albertans want to have a robust discussion about that. But I do always worry. And we saw it with Brexit. I do always worry when people want to send a message that they overcorrect. And so that's why we have to get a number of things, a number of the issues that I've raised. We've got to get the dial moved on that. We've got to turn the page on the Trudeau era and make sure that Albertans can have hope again. And I think that we'd end up with a very positive result of people in my province believing Canada can work again. That's what I'm working towards.
Well, ahead of that, we have the party leader opposite you, Naheed Nenshi of the NDP, calling on every member of the Alberta legislature to sign a document in support of, or rather, denouncing Alberta's sovereignty. But you push back against that. Why?
Naheed Nenshi campaigned for Justin Trudeau. I think people need to understand that. So Justin Trudeau is the cause of our problems over the last 10 years. I think that the opposition leader is trying to distract from that fact. We are trying to work with both the opposition leader as well as the new Prime Minister to try to undo the damage that Trudeau caused to our province and the attacks on our province for 10 years. So Mr. Nenshi has to answer for his own record, and that's part of the reason he's pointing at us, because he doesn't want to tie himself to the support that he had for Trudeau all through those terrible years.
Are you opening yourself up to criticism of perhaps handling this separatist movement with kid gloves?
I look, as I mentioned, it's 1 million people. If you look at the polls, that 30%, and it maybe even more than that. And I have to take that seriously. People are hurt. I mean, I know it's hard to imagine, but we could have had an extra 2.5 million barrels a day of production in this province. By now, if all of those pipeline projects had gone ahead, if they'd been supported by our federal government instead of not only stymied, but actually canceled, 2.5 million barrels a day, $55 billion of additional GDP to our economy, we would have probably had $10 to $12 billion in additional revenue to pay for the schools and the hospitals and the roads. And that is what is frustrating. That's one part of it. But then all the job losses. When you cannot continue to grow your economy, our young people start looking elsewhere. We have a youth employment crisis, which rose to as high as 17%. And when you look around, young people not having the hope because of escalating prices, they don't believe that they can buy a house. They don't believe that they can afford to get married and have kids. It has real consequences when you devastate a province's economy. And what I read into that is Albertans have said, no, it's a hard red line. They're just not going to put up with it anymore. So let's work together to undo those bad policies. And I think that what we'll do is we'll be able to bring that hope to Albertans so that if there is a vote, then it's in favor of Canada.
Okay, very quick last question to you, and it has to do with delivering a pipeline on the MOU. What is the timeline? What's a realistic expectation of a timeline? Because I think when you talk about bringing hope to people of Alberta, part of it is when.
Well, there's a few things. There's a number of different pipeline expansion projects that I think will happen before 2030, including Enbridge's mainline, expansion of TMX, and perhaps a project South Bow is working on with an American counterpart. I know that there's an oil by rail proposal to Nova Scotia that is being talked about and advanced, even potential for Churchill. So there's lots of things that could potentially happen. But I would say that if we get our timeline in June, we get a decision within a very short period of time. We've hoped by the fall. Then we can start the technical work, and then construction can begin. I would imagine sometime around 2030. That would be my timeline.
Okay. Premier Danielle Smith, always appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.